Hello, YouTube. We are back with another guide, and this time we're going to look at Guardian for level 60 level cap on the legendary servers. Well, let's start with virtues quickly. Virtues haven't really changed. I don't level my virtues very much on my guard. I'm still working on some other characters, but as always, the idea is whether you're blue or red, doesn't matter. You always want morale and tactical mitigation. As a heavy armor class, getting your tactical mitigation high enough can be a pain. So you always want tactical mitigation, you want vitality, you want morale. So fortitude, honor, loyalty, and fidelity are really good. And then tolerance is just the next best thing for tactical mitigation. If you get to a point later in the legendary servers, maybe like level 85, 95, 105, and you're finding that it's a little bit easier to hit tactical mitigations, then if you're red, you can do like confidence for more crit. But you never need mastery. I cannot stress that enough when it comes to virtues. Like, yes, agility is good for certain classes. Will is certain good for classes. Might is good for certain classes. But it doesn't matter what you're playing. You don't need the physical mastery. Valor is, in my opinion, a wasted virtue. And it's just, it's like last thing that you kind of need. Wit is good because it's finesse and critical rating, and there is an argument to be made for those ones. But it doesn't matter what class you're playing, you don't need mastery. Mastery is super easy to reach the cap on. I believe at this level it is it's like 2250, I think. It's 2250. So it's really easy to hit. As you can see, I have 2000 with some captain buffs and some scrolls that'll hit cap. Once I get better jewelry, that'll easily be cap. So and that's with 0 damage dealing virtues. All right, so the ones that I have unlocked are probably the ones I recommend. There can be an argument made for confidence if you really want more crit over tactical mitigation. And I'll put a link to the stat caps in the description below, just so you can see. There's a little drop-down menu that's specifically for like the Angmar and Mordor servers, so the 2 legendary servers that are active, where you can see, okay, at level 60, these are the crit caps, these are the mastery caps, these are the mitigation caps, so on and so forth. Alrighty, let's do a little talk about We'll do red first, and then we'll do blue. So red, right, at level 50, we had 35 points, and based on my last video, it would have looked something along the lines of this, right? 35 points spent. So at 60, you get 7 more points. At this point, I think you can easily just finish off Blind Rage to get the guaranteed chance that To the King will increase your damage. The extra 10% for your parry response skills to reset Brutal Assault is a must-have as well. I think that's really good. Now, at this point, you have 5 points. You could start going into yellow, and if you didn't want... Maybe you feel satisfied with the 40% and the 80% giving you an extra 2 more points. So then you could do something like going down into yellow and getting like extra crit rating that basically you get permanently while you're in combat. So in a raid situation, I do recommend these 2 points, which only gives you the 5, and having the 5 points just for the attack duration is fine. Like it's a good tool. Like, it's not bad. However, there is something to be said about putting points into sprint now, as we've reached higher levels and stuff like that, where skills have changed and you've now have like a guaranteed crit chance. And when you're in red line, sprint gives you a damage increase for a certain while, and this buff or trait increases the duration of that buff. So if while you're in the middle of combat or on the beginning of pull, you're going to pop sprint and relentless fury. You pop those two at the start of a pull, and for 20 seconds you're getting 10% extra melee damage. That's pretty good. And in a raid scenario, that's really good. In a dungeon scenario, this is fine, and you don't need the sprint. If you're just doing dungeons, like, yes, it helps. It'll make some fights a lot easier than others, but in an AoE scenario, like, yes, damage is good, but the attack duration is just fine. It's kind of a preference thing, but for raids, especially in Moria, in Moria with how difficult and long some fights are in DN, I would recommend the sprint over the attack duration. This is what we're going to go into, though, when we reach Mirkwood. We go into insult to injury, we start getting the crit stuff, and then we're just going to go further down the tree as we continue on. So in Angmar, we didn't have these points, and it just wasn't beneficial to go into sprint, because you really want the full duration, right? Having 1 point in it doesn't really do a whole lot, but having 5 to 6 points, that makes a big difference. So 20 seconds of 10% melee damage is really good. Now, blue line hasn't really changed. We now just get some yellow stuff. So I believe I'll go back to what it looked like in Moria. Challenge cooldown. Did I want this? Turn the tables. Oh no, perceived threat. Yeah, want that. Incoming healing. I didn't even look at what it was. I think turn the tables is fine. Get the bubble. Juggernaut. Shield taunt will cash. No, don't need that. Yeah, no, this is, yes, this is familiar. This is what it looked like, because we have 35 points. Yeah, so this is what it looked like in Angmar. So now that we're in Moria, we have 7 more points. So what I kind of liked at this point was doing Force Opening, Bastion of Light, and getting some debuffs. I think what you can now do is also kind of mix around some points here to get some other things to go more into yellow. I did have a cheat sheet in case I did forget, because I did forget when I made the Lore Master video, and I messed up the skill tree completely. So this time I wanted to make sure I got it right. Yeah, here we go. Wait, how did I do that? Here, we're just gonna start over. 4 points, 1 point. 1 5. 1 5 1 2 5. There we go. And that, yeah, now we have 9 points. This is what I was looking for. And then we do this, this. And Yeah. So this is what I'm looking. This is kind of what I feel like is a good build for Moria now. And then as we get to Mirkwood, we kind of just finish off the rest of the trees. So we'll get more reduced power cost. I think you can always just remove the reduced power cost and put it into Relentless Assault fully. That's definitely an option that you can do. There's nothing wrong with that. And then as we get more points, we finish this off, and because now we're starting to spread more debuffs, make it easier to survive, and do all that kind of fun stuff. So that's what the trees look like. Not a whole lot has changed, maybe some minor changes. Eventually, you'll want to get the incoming healing because there's nothing wrong with getting more incoming healing. And then eventually, you might get the tactical mitigation at the very end. But that's way longer in the future. All right, so let's talk about gear quickly. Gear for red, unfortunately, is a big issue. As the Moria set, the set bonus is dedicated to blue. However, the stats are still really good for red. Because the Moria set is going to give you the most amount of morale and vitality. So you kind of want it just for the morale and vitality. Where the set bonus for red isn't actually acquired until you complete DN Darnarglebug, which is the really challenging 12-man raid in Moria through Lothlorien. That's where you're going to get that gear. And it's the best you can get for red. However, it's really hard to get. This isn't like the Rift back in Moria where it's super easy. So the best set that you can kind of get for red is this is going to give you a little bit more might. We're in Moria here with the second camp location here in the middle of the map. You can use the Medallions of Lothlorien to get some pieces. However, you're going to lose a lot of vitality. In addition to that, there's the stuff that's in Moria, where you get this gear. There's the set pieces that you can barter for Medallions of Moria that give you. There's a 3-piece that's really good red, but again, you miss out on vitality. And having the morale to survive a lot of these fights at this level cap is really important. So even if you're red, having this armor isn't terrible. It's not ideal. And maybe you can get away with having like the 3-piece purple pieces here and there just to have a better set bonus. But if you really need morale, the Moria blue set is what you're going to want. Now, when it comes to jewelry, it's mostly going to be crafted stuff. So there's like the Sublime morale set pieces. I don't have them all yet, but there's the... what if we just do 58? Oops. 58 jewelry. There's the turtle bracelets, which are pretty decent for DPS. So for Redline, they're probably a must-have. You're going to lose out on morale, but you're going to make it up in other ways. But if you're blue, there's the glowing R8 stuff from the Lothlorien crafted pieces. So here's a decent necklace that's crafted. Here's a decent bracelet that's crafted, right? It gives you a lot of vitality and a little bit of extra morale. I believe there should be rings and earrings of morale as well. They might not be on the auction house. Oh yeah, there's an example of the ring. So that's a really good ring. So a mix between the crafted stuff, but there's also a couple of rare drops from dungeons. This cloak is really good for tank. There's a similar one. This drops from the Grand Stair, and there's a similar one that's more DPS related that drops from the Grand Stair that's good. You can also farm the Cloak of Shadow and Flame from the Reflecting Pool dungeon that's tied to the book. I'll head over there to show you where it is. But the Cloak of Shadow and Flame is good all around.
Hail, friend, and
The other good pieces are Halls of Crafting, and I'll make sure I'll put this on the screen just so you can see what they look like. But Halls of Crafting has the best necklace for Redline, and it has some really good bracelets as well for Redline. It probably has the best pocket item for both Redline and Tank. It's not technically like a DPS pocket, but you're gonna need the morale, and so the miniature brass anvil that drops from the Halls of Crafting is just gonna be your best bet. Because again, you're going to be at the mastery cap, and you're going to be really close to crit cap. So at some point, you don't need the damage; you just need to survive. And then Grand Stair has some other good pieces as well for both tank and DPS or Redline. There's a good shield that you'll want from there. There's a good there's a good necklace for tanking in there. There's a good bracelet for tanking that's in there. There's the cloaks that we mentioned. From Scumfell, there's a couple of items. There's the gold earring and the which is from the spider boss in challenge mode. And then there's also the ornate copper sphere, which is from the right side of Scumfell. The boss that you kill is Grim Reaver. It has a lot of crit rating, so if you're Redline, those two pieces would be really good. Even though they have a lot of other stats, the best crit rating those would be your best crit rating pieces, but they're not necessary. They're just, if you're one of those like hardcore min-maxer players, that's what I would recommend. But honestly, the Lothlorien crafted jewelry pieces and then between the Grand Stair and the Halls of Crafting, that's all you're going to need. So when you complete I believe it's book 8, chapter 7, somewhere near there, might be the other way around, book 7, chapter 8, it's called New Devilry. You just follow the book line and eventually you'll unlock it. In that dungeon, which you can do solo because of the inspiration buff and because it's a book quest, the final boss drops the singed cloak, like let's say 90% of the time. However, there's a chance that instead of the singed cloak, you get the cloak of shadow and flame. You can farm this at this reflecting pool. It'll just be instant new devilry. And you can just keep doing it as much as you want until you get the cloak. It's a decent cloak. It gives you good might, good vitality, good crit, and good morale. It's decent all around. For tanking specifically, I would suggest the Cloak of the Stronghold from Grand Stair, but if you want kind of a good all-around cloak of Shadow and Flame is fine. There could be some better, like if you want a red specific cloak, there might be some crafted cloaks that might have better stats if you're more interested in that. But generally, the Cloak of Shadow Flame is good enough. Now we'll quickly talk about the legendary items. Wait, not Herald of... Is it Herald of the Lion? No. You're going to want Heraldry of the Ox. The reason why you want Heraldry of the Ox is because it gives you more vitality. And as I always say, vitality is always more important because you're going to always have more than enough might for reaching the mastery cap. So Heraldry of the Ox is better, so you want... And that's for tanking and Redline, right? Blue and red. I don't believe I have... Oh, I do. Yeah. So you'll want 2 of those for Redline and 2 of those for Blue Line. If we go back to Redline quickly, you'll want 1 damage over time because we have so many dots, so increasing our dot damage is really good. And then of course you want single target attack damage. Eventually you'll get the crit ones, but I'd save those for future level caps. Just getting the flat single target attack damage and the flat dot damage is better at this level. And then you're going to want 2 heroic precisions, and then eventually we're going to get 4, because this is where we get our crit, which is, of course, for red line, that's really good. For blue, you're going to want the base morale multiplier, so extra morale and vitality, and then a tactical damage reduction one, because tactical is our weakness as a guardian. And then we also get some extra tactical mitigation where you want the grand willpower. You want 2, eventually you'll want 4. So now back to redline for the other traceries. To the King is a must-have. It's one of our main hitting damage abilities, so we want that. Overwhelm, also another one of our main hitting damage abilities, so we want that. And then parry response, as this is our kind of our main source of sustained damage, right? Parry response damage is anything that triggers off of a parry response. So breach causes a parry response, which means thrust will do more damage, overwhelm will do more damage, to the King will do more damage, and I think it might technically also buff breach, but I don't actually know. Regardless, it's still a must-have. Now this is where things are interesting. So I've been messing around with Stamp, and you're probably thinking, why Stamp? I mean, the cooldown is really nice, but it kind of connects to kind of how our rotation works, and it's a little bit more of a high-end thing with animation canceling. I'm gonna loop back to that later, but what you could get instead is brutal assault damage, right? Because we have brutal assault, it resets constantly. Buffing the damage of it, totally fine. So I'll explain why Stamp is kind of interesting later. Then going back to blue, Warrior's Heart, Morale Heal, and Maximum Health must have. It makes you unkillable, and it's like a full health heal. So it's a great oh shit button, but it also is just, you're like, okay, I'm totally safe, nothing can kill me now. Catch a Breath cooldown and heal. We always love in blue. We always love Catch a Breath. We want to increase the heal from it, and having it more often just makes our lives as tanks easier. And then the other 2 you'll want for tank, Force Taunt duration is a must-have. Just having your Force Taunts last longer just makes it easier for yourself, makes it easier for your party. Really good to have. And then Guardian's Pledge cooldown and magnitude. Once again, is just really good to have, because again, it's another great oh shit button, I'm dying. Reducing the cooldown is great, and the magnitude part increases the bubble you get from it, so it's also just a must-have. Alrighty, so now to go back to the whole Stamp thing, and I'm going to show a little example at housing, because there's just a target dummy there. So Stamp, for the really advanced players, Stamp is used not only obviously to interrupt skills, but it's a great ability to cancel animations. Guardian has a few skills that have really long animations. So the base rotation, right, is we want our bleeds to be up as much as possible, and then consume our bleeds with hammer down, and then reapply them as we consume them. So sweep, right, we want to do sweep and cut, we want to do brutal assault, and we want to do thrust to make it so that because we want to apply our bleeds first. Sweep and cut and brutal assault have really long animations. So I'm just gonna pull out a target dummy here just to showcase this. So that's the animation of sweeping cut, and then it goes into auto attack animations. You can instantly remove that animation by hitting stamp. So if I do sweeping cut into stamp, it cuts out the animation immediately. It still does the damage of the 2 attacks, and it does the damage of stamp, which, because we now have the tracery for it, actually does a decent amount of damage. But Brutal Assault also has a really long animation. But Breach is a good tool to also cancel animations. So kind of your opening rotation with this stamp tech would look something like this. Sweeping cut into stamp, Brutal Assault into Breach, and then we have thrust. I'm going to show that again, but without the animation canceling, just to show you how long it would take normally. Sweeping cut, Brutal Assault, Breach, thrust. And then you can do To the King, and then we have all of our bleeds, so we use Hammer Down, and then we consume them, and we kind of start the rotation over. Obviously, you would use Sprint and Relentless Fury to gain the extra damage at the start, but I want to show it one more time, but now using the animation canceling tech, just to show you how fast this can go. But I'll wait until Hammer Down comes off cooldown just to really tie the rotation all together. It's more advanced, and if it kind of frightens you or freaks you out a bit, I totally get it. It's something to practice, and it is weird using your interruption skill to not interrupt, but to actually increase your damage. It is a little bit weird, but here we go. Right? So much faster. And I ended up doing it twice there. So it does make a difference in your damage quite a bit. Right? Brutal Assault into thrust is almost instantaneous, and then you can go... I messed that up because I hit the wrong button. But then you can go right into Overwhelm and To the King after you consume the bleeds. So just kind of keep that in mind. Breach and Stamp reduce the animations of your big skills. So what you want to do is kind of trying to find a way to like weave them in so that you can just do more damage. But otherwise, that's kind of your general rotation. Sweeping Cut, Brutal Assault, Breach, Thrust, To the King, then Hammer Down, then repeat, Sweeping Cut, Brutal Assault, Breach, Thrust. This time do Overwhelm into To the King because we've already used Hammer Down. And then you're kind of just going to go back and forth between the two. Hammer Down and not using Hammer Down, or using Overwhelm into To the King, or Thrust into To the King because you need to maintain your bleeds. As long as you're maintaining your bleeds and consuming them and then reapplying the bleeds immediately after consuming them, your damage will be fine. Sting is a faster animation and can kind of reset, but it's not as efficient as Breach is. Breach and Stamp is so instantaneous that it's better to just use the other two. Guardian's Ward also has a long animation, so you can use Breaching or Guardian's Ward into Breach if you really need to. But as I talked about in the level 50 video, Guardian's Ward and Sting aren't super used, so they're more situational than actually part of the rotation. But But yeah, that kind of concludes the video. Maybe this went on a little bit longer than I expected, but I did talk about everything that I wanted to talk about. The rotation for blue, I don't think I really need to go into, but we can kind of talk about it, I guess, because it's just about maintaining Guardian's Ward so that you always have the block and parry chance active. You're using Sweeping Cut and Vexing Blow and Whirling Retaliation in AoE scenarios, but also in single target scenarios to help increase your threat, especially Vexing Blow because it extremely increases your threat. The fact that it's AoE is just really good. We now have Force Opening, so it's just giving us more chances to activate our Retaliation. You always want to try to use Retaliation Bash into Shield Smash so that you can set up Smashing Stab, because if you've used everything, this guarantees a Fellowship Maneuver. So basically every minute you can... I know it has a 30-second cooldown, but the Fellowship Maneuver thing is on a minute cooldown. So every minute you're guaranteed to get a Fellowship Maneuver. Otherwise, what you want to do is just use it after Retaliation so that it just does damage and applies a bleed. Try to maintain Bastion of Light when you can. Juggernaut is a oh shit button, so you don't need to worry about maintaining it or anything. That's... oh, whoops, that's in the wrong spot. That's kind of it. Shield Taunt and Challenge are just kind of used when you can. Use Challenge for big pulls, Shield Taunt for when you're trying to maintain like 5+ enemies and you want to maintain threat. You just keep using Shield Taunt and Vexing Blow. Yeah, that's really it. So hopefully you found this helpful. I am currently leveling a Hunter and a Captain, so those will be the two next classes that I do a guide on. I don't know when I'm going to get them to a point where I can do a guide on them just yet. It might not be to the level 65 cap, but hopefully I can at least get one of them done just before this Mirkwood comes out, so that I can at least have those two classes, at least one of them, but hopefully the two classes ready so that we can have 4 class guides ready for 65. I think I'm going to do a Runekeeper guide next, though, and I'm just going to do it on my level 150 character, and just kind of talk about the really basic stuff. I won't go too much into like rotations and whatnot because I'll have a lot more skills, and because I have more legacies and stuff, the rotation's slightly different. But I can at least talk about virtues and the main legacies that you'll want, and I can still talk about gear and whatnot on them. But yeah, so that'll be next on the list. If there's any other normal guides that you want, please leave a comment. But as always, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate the love and support, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.